Carl didn't grow up with much, but he had Grove Street, family, and loyalty until it all fell apart. By 1987, his younger brother was dead. His older brother blamed him, and Carl ran from Los Santos to Liberty City. For 5 years, he stayed away, trying to start over. But when his mother was murdered in a drive-by, Carl came home, and what he found would change his life forever. Our story begins in 1992, but for Carl, the real starting gun fired 5 years earlier, back in 1987. That was the year his younger brother Brian tragically died. The cause? Well, that's a cloud that hung over Carl's head for a long, long time. His older brother Sean, better known as Sweet, never let him forget it, constantly reminding Carl that he let Brian die. Whatever truly happened, the incident was enough to send Carl packing, abandoning his childhood home on Grove Street, leaving behind his family and friends, and making a break for the concrete jungle of Liberty City. For 5 years, Carl Johnson tried to leave the hood behind him, working small-time car theft gigs and other shady dealings with Joey Leone, the son of a big-shot mob boss named Salvatore Leone. He was trying to escape his past, trying to forget the crushing weight of guilt and the feeling that he'd failed his family. The East Coast, as his old friends would later observe, had thinned him out, both physically and perhaps spiritually, away from the constant pressures of Los Santos. But some ties, no matter how frayed, can never truly be broken. The call came across the miles. It was Sweet. Their mother, Beverly Johnson, had been gunned down in a drive-by shooting. Carl knew deep down he had to go back. His family, even if they were mad at him, needed him, and he needed to understand. So in 1992, Carl Johnson, clad in his simple white tank top, blue jeans, and black tennis shoes, so different from the black hoodie and blue jeans he sometimes sported in his Liberty City days, stepped off the plane in Los Santos. He was a somewhat short African-American man, with a classic Caesar hairstyle, dark hair, brown eyes, and a hint of facial hair. He looked a lot like his father, a man he never knew, and his brother Brian, a ghost that haunted him. He was thin now, a far cry from the fatter and more muscular kid his friends remembered before he left. He was heading home, but home wasn't what it used to be. Before he even made it to his mother's house, the past caught up to him. His taxi was pulled over, and out of the shadows emerged the grim faces of Frank Tenpenny, Eddie Pulaski, and Jimmy Hernandez, the notoriously corrupt officers of Crash. They weren't there to welcome him home. They knew Carl's history, and they immediately set about twisting his arm, framing him for the murder of a fellow officer, Ralph Pendlebury, a murder they themselves had committed. From that moment on, Carl was caught in their web, forced to do their dirty work or face trumped-up charges. It was a hell of a welcome home. When he finally reached the Johnson house, the sight was both familiar and heartbreaking. His old friend Melvin Big Smoke Harris was there, looking larger than Carl remembered. Then came the reunion with his siblings. Sweet, still simmering with resentment over Brian, and Kendall, his intelligent and outspoken sister. Ryder, another childhood friend, was there too, though his presence felt a little off to Carl, something he couldn't quite put his finger on at the time. Carl quickly realized just how much had changed. The Grove Street families, once a force to be reckoned with, had fallen hard. The cul-de-sac he grew up on, where old Reese, the local barber, still held court with memories of Carl's father, was now a shadow of its former self. Crack cocaine had flooded the streets, tearing apart communities and weakening the gang's hold. Sweet, the proud leader, seemed to have lost some of his personal strength, burdened by the responsibility in the absence of Carl. Carl, who still bore the sting of being cast out of the gang years ago, knew he had to earn his way back. He had to prove his loyalty to his family, to his brother, and to the very street that had shaped him. He had a deep-seated loyalty to Grove Street, a loyalty that even his 5 years away couldn't erase. And so Carl began the arduous task of rebuilding. He and Sweet worked tirelessly side by side, sometimes bickering, sometimes united. Carl wasn't the heartless killer of past protagonists. He had a complex inner world, While he had no problem with killing rival gang members who stood in the way of reclaiming Grove Street turf or sabotaging his businesses, he also showed a great remorse for killing those he once considered friends. Their mission was clear: reunite the scattered Seville and Temple families, bring the Grove Street families back to prominence, and drive out the Ballas, the sworn enemies who had invaded their territory. It was during this time that Kendall started a loving relationship with Cesar Villalpando, the leader of the Varios Los Aztecas, a rival gang of Sweets. At first, Sweet was angry, but Carl saw the strategic partnership it could lead to. Carl's journey back into the fold involved countless gunfights, turf wars, and difficult choices. He helped OG Locke, a truly laughable poser who fancied himself a rapper, unwittingly ruining the career of the actual rap superstar Mad Dog in the process. It was dirty work, but Carl was doing what he believed was necessary for Grove Street. He fought with a growing sense of responsibility, his actions often driven by a need to protect his family and what little remained of their legacy. He even displayed a fierce, aggressive side when Kendall was threatened, famously burying a construction foreman alive in a portable toilet for insulting his sister. As the Grove Street family slowly clawed their way back, they reached a second peak of power. They were planning a massive ambush to wipe out the remaining Ballas. But just as victory seemed within their grasp, the rug was pulled out from under them. Cesar Villalpando, always a man of principle, delivered the crushing news to Carl, Ryder, and Big Smoke. His childhood friends, his supposed brothers, had betrayed them. They were in league with Crash and the Ballas. Carl raced to the gunfight, knowing Sweet and the gang were walking into a trap. He arrived just in time, holding off the Ballas to rescue a heavily wounded Sweet, but it was too late. Both brothers were arrested by Crash. The Grove Street families and the Varios Los Aztecas, shattered by the betrayal and arrests, practically disappeared overnight. Big Smoke, the man who had sat at their mother's table, became a formidable drug lord, taking over Los Santos with an iron fist. His empire built on the very crack cocaine that had brought Grove Street to its knees. OG Locke, now a famous rapper, was merely a front, his career managed by Smoke as a way to launder his ill-gotten gains. Carl's world once again imploded. Crash, always with their own agenda, dumped him in rural Whetstone, far from Los Santos, tasking him with eliminating a witness who had dirt on their corrupt activities. It was slowly becoming clear that Tenpenny and Pulaski were facing a corruption trial, a case that was gaining significant media attention. Carl, exiled and adrift, found himself in a new, unfamiliar landscape. It was during this period that Cesar introduced Carl to his somewhat unstable cousin, Catalina. Their relationship was a volatile one, built on a series of daring robberies across the countryside. Carl's naive personality often led Catalina to question his intelligence, but he went along with her schemes, needing the money and the distraction. Tenpenny reappeared, forcing Carl into another one of his convoluted plans. He introduced Carl to the Truth, an aging, eccentric hippie who supplied Tenpenny with massive amounts of weed. Tenpenny ordered Carl to frame a district attorney who was posing a threat to Crash. When Tenpenny demanded Carl pay for the drug shipment, Carl was forced back to work with Catalina, who now had developed an obsessive, almost unhinged crush on him. Carl met Woozy Moo, called Woozy, during a street race. Woozy was blind but very smart, and led the San Fierro triads. At the race, Catalina showed up angry at Carl, and she had a new boyfriend named Claude. Even though Carl was starting to feel loyal to his new friends, he still wanted to win. He beat Claude and Catalina in the race and won the deed to Claude's old broken-down garage in San Fierro. After the race, Carl left the countryside and headed to San Fierro. He brought along the Truth and the shipment of marijuana that Tenpenny had left behind. When he got to the city, he met up with Kendall and Cesar at the garage, which was located in a rundown area called Doherty. At first, Carl was angry about the garage. He thought it was a complete mess and had no use. But Kendall, who had a good eye for business, saw something different. She told Carl it was a great chance to fix up a place that could become valuable. With help from the Truth, Carl brought in Dwayne, Jethro, and Zero. A strange group, but one that turned out to be very helpful. Together they worked on turning the garage into a busy, though illegal, car theft operation. In San Fierro, Carl began to change. He still cared about Grove Street, but his time away helped him think in new ways. He started to see things differently and began acting more smartly and carefully. He moved beyond just gang thinking and became more strategic. He set up a plan to plant drugs in a district attorney's car to get him in trouble. He tricked a violent gang, the Da Nang Boys, into leaving Chinatown, so he could help a triad leader. He used traps to catch cars without damaging them. He even helped plan a big casino robbery. Carl's partnership with Woozy grew stronger. They teamed up to take down the Loco Syndicate, the group supplying drugs to Big Smoke, and to stop Woozy's enemies, the Da Nang Boys. Step by step, he worked his way into the syndicate and took out its main members. First was Jizzy B, a sleazy pimp. Then came T-Bone Mendez, a dangerous and powerful figure. Finally, there was Ryder, the hardest blow of all. Ryder had been Carl's friend since they were kids. They rode bikes together on Grove Street, grew up side by side. But Ryder had turned his back on their family and helped destroy everything they stood for. Carl found him on a boat, and after a fast-paced chase, killed him. It hurt. It left Carl feeling a deep sadness. He had to do it for his family, for his neighborhood. But it didn't make it any easier. Carl felt regret, and that made him different. Unlike the cold-hearted main characters in other stories, Carl still had a sense of right and wrong. He didn't enjoy the violence or the loss. Even when people betrayed him, it affected him. After taking down the Loco Syndicate, Carl started making real money. The garage turned into a busy car theft operation, and his rental properties were also bringing in cash. He was getting rich and building his own empire from scratch. Just when it seemed like he was free from Tenpenny's control, he got a surprise call. It was Mike Terreno, someone Carl thought had died while working with the Loco Syndicate, but Terreno wasn't dead. He was actually a government agent, and he had an offer. If Carl helped him with a few jobs, he'd get Sweet out of prison. Carl didn't know what to think. He kept it quiet, but one day the truth found him at Terreno's secret base. The truth warned Carl not to trust Terreno. He said the man was dangerous and had his own hidden plans. But Carl couldn't ignore the chance to save Sweet. No matter what, he had to try. So he kept working for Terreno, taking on mission after mission. One of the craziest jobs was stealing a jetpack from a top-secret military base called Area 69. The place was full of armed guards and high-tech security, but Carl managed to get in and out. He gave the jetpack to the Truth, who said it would help him collect some strange green goo that had something to do with enlightenment. Woozy saw that Carl was smart and good at business, so he invited him to help run the Triad's Four Dragons Casino. When Carl arrived, Woozy gave him a share of the casino as a sign of trust. He just needed Carl to help getting it up and running. But running a casino wasn't easy. Right away, they ran into trouble from Caligula's Palace, a rival casino controlled by the Mafia. The Mafia was powerful and didn't like competition. To fight back, Carl and Woozy started planning a huge heist. Their goal was to rob Caligula's casino. To pull it off, Carl had to get close to the Mafia. That meant pretending to work with them and gaining their trust. It was risky, but if the plan worked, it would hit the Mafia hard and prove that Carl and Woozy weren't afraid to stand up to them. Carl's undercover work led him to a strange connection with two people in the music world, Kent Paul and Masser. Both were tied to Ken Rosenberg, who managed Caligula's Palace, a fancy casino. By coincidence, Carl got pulled into their wild and messy lives. Before long, he was working closely with Rosenberg and even with Salvatore Leone, a powerful mafia boss. Carl ended up helping all three fake their deaths to avoid Salvatore's anger. Even though Carl was still young, he stayed calm under pressure. A good example of this is during the mission called The Meat Business, when he told Ken Rosenberg to stay cool and take charge, reminding him, "You're the boss." During this tense time, Crash pushed Carl to his limit. They were desperate, with their trial coming up soon. They tried to kill Carl, and did manage to murder Hernandez for turning against them. But Carl, now tougher and smarter, survived. He ended up killing Pulaski, the dirty cop who had insulted his family and tried to take his life. Then, something unexpected happened. Carl saw Mad Dog, the famous rapper whose career he helped ruin, trying to kill himself. Carl felt guilty. Maybe it was a small piece of his Christian upbringing that he still held onto, despite all he had done. He jumped into action and saved Mad Dog using a truck full of crates. Carl still wanted revenge on Tenpenny and Big Smoke. At the same time, Mad Dog had been forced to sell his mansion to a drug dealer named Big Papa. All of this pushed Carl to return to Los Santos. This time, he came back not as someone running from the past, but as a rich and clever man ready to take control. His first move was to take back Mad Dog's mansion by force. While working on Mad Dog's new album, Terreno finally kept his word. Carl finished his last job for the government agent, and Sweet was released from prison. But the reunion didn't go the way Carl hoped. Sweet, still loyal to Grove Street and its struggles, was upset by Carl's rich new lifestyle. He accused Carl of turning his back on the Grove Street families. Carl tried to get Sweet to leave the hood behind and focus on the wealth and opportunities they now had in San Fierro and Los Venturas. But Sweet refused. He was loyal to the block and didn't want to leave it behind. Instead, he dragged Carl back into the old life, insisting they take back their territory, which had fallen to the ballas and become overrun with drug dealers while Carl was gone. Carl didn't want to do it at first, but he went along. He jumped back into the gang life. The skills he had picked up in San Fierro gave him a new, smarter approach to things. Grove Street families slowly began to rise again, and Carl was back in charge, this time with more experience and a better plan. As they took back the neighborhood, Carl also got revenge on OG Locke by stealing back Mad Dog's rhyme book. This helped Mad Dog return to music and deal a hard hit to Big Smoke's growing power. The news spread fast. Officer Tenpenny's trial was over, and because there was enough proof, he was set free. Right after the verdict, the city of Los Santos exploded into riots. People were angry and took to the streets in chaos. In the middle of all of this, the Grove Street families led by Carl and Sweet took advantage of the disorder. They fought hard and won back nearly half the city, reclaiming what they had lost. Carl went straight for Big Smoke's stronghold, known as the Crack Palace. It was well guarded, but Carl pushed through. Inside, he came face to face with Big Smoke, a man who had once been like a brother. After a tough gunfight, Carl killed him. It was something he had to do to get Sweet's full respect and to destroy the empire built on lies. Still, it hurt. But Tenpenny wasn't finished yet. As the city burned and chaos continued, Carl and Sweet went after him. The chase took them across Los Santos. It ended when Tenpenny's fire truck flew off a bridge near Grove Street and crashed. His time was up. Back at the Johnson house, Mad Dog, along with Ken, Kent, and Macer, proudly shared the news of their first gold record. It was a big win, showing how Carl had turned things around for the rapper and helped bring his career back to life. Sweet, always focused on the big picture, reminded everyone that Grove Street needed to come first. He talked about fixing up their neighborhood and making it strong again. Kendall, thinking about the future, brought up going back to Las Venturas with Woozy. She hinted at the business plans they had and the new opportunities waiting for them. Carl listened to all of it. He had been through a lot: betrayals, victories, hard times, and big success. Now he had money, houses, and part ownership of a casino. But when it came time to speak, he just said he was fittin' to hit the block, see what's happening. He had made it, but he hadn't forgotten the people or the place that made him who he was. So, what happened to Carl Johnson after the chaos ended and the credits rolled? The game leaves us with Carl as a young man who's now very rich. He had a lot going for him. Grove Street families was strong again. Mad Dog had a big music deal in Los Santos. Carl owned a busy car garage and other properties in San Fierro, and he had a big stake in the Four Dragons Casino in Las Venturas. On top of all of that, he even had access to a $60 million jetpack from his time working with Terreno, whether he liked it or not. It looks like Carl, Mad Dog, Kent Paul, and Macer were about to go on a world tour. Mad Dog talked about it in the final cutscene, showing that Carl had helped Kent Paul and Macer get their band back together. This was proof that Carl was becoming a major player in business and the entertainment world. There's a small joke in Grand Theft Auto 4 that hints Carl and some other characters from the older games might be dead. But Rockstar Games later said this was just a fun Easter egg for longtime fans, nothing serious. It was just their way of saying goodbye to the old game world and introducing a new one. So, as far as the story goes, Carl Johnson is still alive. If you want to see more stories like this, click the video on screen right now.